Hi, my name is James Sherer. I'm a partner at the law firm Baker Hostetler, and I work in the New York office. I co-lead the emerging tech team, which sits under our digital assets and data management group. Really, as part of the emerging tech team, I tend to lead some of our engagements associated with information governance or big data applications, as well as the utilization of artificial intelligence. And really here, I'm speaking of weak AI or the process-driven algorithms, but this can be very important, even if it's not replacing people necessarily. Sometimes it does end up replacing individual decisions made by people, and it can scale. That is, it can take an individual decision and it can magnify it because it can replicate that decision over and over again. So this is a theme we're seeing more and more attention paid to throughout the world. Now, in the United States, a lot of that attention has been directed from the FTC or Federal Trade Commission, and the FTC has gone backwards in time a little bit, looking at the application of big data techniques and different computing and algorithm approaches there. At some point in time, the FTC switched its focus from big data back in 2014 through 2016, and then in the year 2020 and this year 2021 started to look more at AI and its applications sitting on top of big data. Likewise, we've got the European Commission, who earlier this year in 2021 put forward some proposed AI regulations. Now, the European Union's view of these regulations was built upon the GDPR, so earlier data privacy legislation, which looked here within regulation format to say, well, if you're going to be using personal information and you're going to be processing it in an automated way, then there are certain requirements you're going to have to abide by in the processing of that information. Likewise, China recently put forward its data privacy law. And there too, the PIPL, the Chinese privacy law, looks at the automated processing of information and its application. So you have the EU that's already put forward through the GDPR, this regulation about processing information in automated ways. You have China, which is putting it forward and gone or will go into effect as of November 1st of 2021. You have the European Union that's promulgated at least draft laws that they'll be evaluating over the course of the next couple of years. And then within the United States, the FTC has directly evaluated laws specific to the regulation of AI. But what do those laws mean, or at least what does regulatory enforcement mean? I think from our perspective, we've tried to break down some of the FTC guidance to give clients a more streamlined but specific approach to evaluating those. And I've broken that into a number of steps, and I'm going to go over them briefly here and talk about the application. And it first starts with the data gathering phase of algorithm development. Data gathering is what it sounds like. You're pulling information in, you're creating the strata or the data pool upon which you're going to build your approach. Which isn't to say that's where the math comes from necessarily. The math, the algorithms associated with AI and its development, and those have been around for a while. A lot of it is just trying to separate like from dislike or categorize certain things, bring them into the fold, learning about the information you have. The true value, according to client work that I've done, tends to be in the data collections themselves. Just to say, it's the data that's truly important here. You can slice and dice the data differently depending on the mathematical approach, but the data is going to inform the picture. And of course, if you're looking at the behavioral economist view here, the truer the data picture is, the better your results are going to be. The better insights you're going to have into the data if the data itself is a good data set. That speaks to the second component here, which is the data compilation, the way in which you pull the information in. This is an area where you need to apply some scrutiny. You're thinking about the data. You want to check to make sure you don't have any 200-year-old people. So part of that is data cleansing and evaluating it, but also to confirm that you have captured the data in a way that you're allowed to use the data as you'd like to. And we'll talk about that in just a moment about consents. So once you've collected your data and made sure it's a good data collection set and that it means what it says and you don't have extraneous data factors that are going to affect your model, you have to choose what models you start to build on top of that. So that's the model and AI application selection. So if I've got a data set, what is the best tool or set of tools to use on top of that data? Again, if you're thinking about regulatory enforcement about this process, what defensible process do you have to say, this is the data we have, here's the results that we wanted to get to, we've picked this type of model to build within it. So if we've got a good data set, but we know that we're thinking about utilization within a subset of miners, we want to think carefully about what the algorithms are, as well as what type of data we use. Then you think about how you're developing the model, and then the model testing and refinement. So you're applying the model, you're seeing if the results that you expect to get are in fact the results you're getting. And then you're testing and refining it. And this is an iterative approach. You really need to look at it and do it a number of different times to make sure that you have a defensible approach as far as that goes. You're applying all that within your data set, but you do need to think about your interaction with, at least in the United States, what we consider to be our consumers. And part of that is because the FTC in its approach looks at what kind of consumer protections it has in place. Likewise, with other areas in the world, I think you think more of the actual individuals who you've got. So residents of different locales, the way in which you capture that information. So what do you need to tell them? How does that need to work? And there it speaks to both front end and back end disclosures. Front end speaks to, hey, consumers, hey, residents, we're collecting your information. Here's the manner in which we're going to use that information. This is your step of consent. Now, the back end disclosures, of course, would be, we've done these different things. Now, if you want to take the opportunity to evaluate what we've done with it, you have that opportunity. You can look at our data sets. You can look at our results. Some of that may be protected under certain intellectual property rights, but for the most part, to the extent that disclosures are available, using your business process or your approach, then you want to make sure those are available for the consumers or the individuals or residents that really the data have been involved in. Finally, in addition to the disclosures, you think about the model deployment, and this is an area in which it's really a brand new scope of law and an approach. So model deployment speaks to, all right, well, now you've built a model, you've built it on top of good information, you've gone through an audited approach, you've done an iterative approach to it, you've documented all of that work as an organization that's developed a model. Well, now, how are you putting it into place? And there too, you've got a deployment strategy. You're pulling the information in, you're pulling the model in, you're running it through, you're seeing how it applies. There's a lot of fuzziness to this process, but you shouldn't be afraid of that. You just acknowledge it and build it into your process and approach. You also have to audit on the back end. Now, if you think about the arc that's happened here across all of it, you've got the collection of the information. You could look at the consent on the front end to say, if you're pulling in information directly from consumers in the United States, individuals elsewhere in the world, or certainly within the United States as well, you've told them what you're going to do with it. You've built the model on top of a good set of data that you've checked and double checked to make sure that it is consistent with what you'd expect to see from the data. You've documented all that internally. You've disclosed out, perhaps in ways that are commensurate with your online policies about the way in which you developed all of this. And then you're thinking prospectively how you're going to apply it. So you're starting to apply the model, you're looking at the results, and you're auditing those results and the deployment of the model as you go. One of the challenges here is, as you've developed a model, you've developed an approach, you're pushing it forward into the market. How much responsibility do you continue to maintain about that model? This is new, or at least it's arguably new within the practice of AI. You develop a product, you put a bicycle out there on the market, there may be an expectation that the bicycle is going to perform as the bicycle would. It's not going to be dangerous to people, or more dangerous than someone would expect a bicycle to operate. The same may be said for an AI model and its deployment. And the challenge would be here, well, does it matter about the math, or does it matter about the data, or is it a combination of the two? Likewise, if a model truly is built on data, and the best models are built on the best data, which is to say the most sensitive information in its application, then if you have consent associated with the model's development, and that consent picture changes, does that change as a predicate for the model's development and its utilization? Or if you have an idea that the model is going to be used in a certain way, how much responsibility do you retain for that model's use within the market? There are a lot of unanswered questions, and this is a nascent area of practice within AI and its development. But we're trying to orient for clients that we've worked with and certainly within the market, an approach that says, these are all concerns that you have to have, all considerations that you build into the model. And in doing so, if you're documenting it properly, you have a story to tell to regulators or other people who may have an interest in the use that you have of that model. So it's a beginnings of thought. Much of this information is available certainly online. It's not a secret according to what the regulators are doing or wish to do, but it is a brand new world as far as the application goes. Thank you.